Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Authentic Info Podcast. I'm your host, Admas Andlechok. Now, in this episode, we're going to look at the proposed bill by government. It's a tobacco bill. It regulates, or it's going to regulate where or when a smoker can freely smoke. That's what its intention is. But I think there are hidden agendas. Now, there are three aspects which a lot of people have been focusing on, and I'm interested in also looking into that. Number one, we have outdoor. Number two, indoors. Number three, in your car. Now, what happens when you smoke outdoors is that you can be jailed for 6 months. I'm referring here. You can be jailed for 6 months if you smoke outdoors, or for example, in a parking lot or in an open space where even if there are no people. For example, for as long as it's a parking lot or an open space, if this law comes to pass, you won't be allowed to smoke in such a space. Number two, indoors. You can be jailed for 3 months if you happen to be smoking indoors, in your own house, in your own home. If there's someone who doesn't smoke and you are smoking inside the house, you can, if that person reports you, you can be jailed for 3 months. Now, even in your car, if you are found smoking, or if you have a passenger who's a non-smoker in your car, and this person decides to report you in your car, you can be jailed for 3 months. Now, what does this mean? It means that, number one, smokers must be careful, and they must make sure that where they smoke, they are non-smokers. And I think it's also a duty for non-smokers to tell a smoker that I don't smoke. Can you please smoke when I'm not here? Let's say it's in your car and the person wants to smoke, and you can say no. You can smoke after dropping me off, or things like that. So that you must not let someone smoke. I mean, it's their habit. They want to smoke, they smoke, and then after that you decide to report them. But what does this mean, when it comes to the justice system of South Africa? Because I understand they have their own intentions, but I don't think they have looked at this, thoroughly, or the circumstances thereof. Because number one, prison is overcrowded in South Africa, whether it's by foreigners or people without, or people who are poor, because there are people who are in prison who have been given, for example, 500 rand bail, but they don't afford that money, so they had to be in prison. There are people who were sentenced with an option of a fine of 1,000 rand. They did not have that 1,000 rand. They are in prison. There are foreigners. There are a lot of people in prison who had it wasn't because of circumstances, they wouldn't be there. So imagine you are sentenced to 6 months in prison for smoking in your car, and then you have to go in a prison which is overcrowded. You have to go in a prison which is dirty. You have to go in a prison which doesn't have enough food. You have to go in a prison which doesn't have enough beds. You have to go in a prison which doesn't have good health. You have to go in a prison that is dirty. You have to go in a prison where you will be exposed to different lifestyles. You have to go into a prison where you can be stabbed. You have to go in a prison where you can arrive and commit a serious crime. You are sentenced for 3 months, and then you commit a serious crime. That means that you have a further charge, and then you have to go to trial again while you are inside, serving a very short term, a very short prison sentence, and you happen to stay in prison for more than 20 years. So I don't think this is a right move by government. I mean, we have serious offenses that are being committed in South Africa that needs government's attention. We have crimes of human trafficking. We have crimes of drug trade. We have crimes, of murder. We have crimes of robberies, hijacking. We have crimes of CIT, cash in transit robberies. We have crimes of rape. So imagine sending someone for merely smoking in their own house, in their own car, in an open space. You send this person to prison to be exposed to one of the most dangerous prisoners. Because if you're in prison, it doesn't mean that you will be stabbed or you'll join a gang. but you can be exposed to a different lifestyle, which might affect your life after prison. You will hear stories, for example, by people who were making fraud, and you can realize that no, I can go out and do the same thing. Those guys made a mistake here, and then I can avoid this. So for merely being sentenced to prison for at least 3 months, 6 months, you can be exposed to different things. There's rape in prison, for example. Imagine sending someone in prison for smoking in their own car while there was a non-smoker, and then they are raped and infected with HIV. The person comes out with a serious disease, and which can lead him to depression. It depends on how he's going to accept or how he's going to receive the information. Some people are depressed, some people give up in life. So I think the government must rethink. And there's a hashtag, and there's also a website where people must sign a petition to stop the tobacco bill. There's a website. I've also subscribed to the website. I don't agree. I'm a non-smoker, but I foresee the dangers that this bill will pose. And I think the government has been reckless. I mean, unless if they want to control the illegal cigarette trade, for example, the influx of fake cigarettes. We have seen or have learned, even though people say that that documentary is not that legit, but we have learned that RG is being processed in Zimbabwe, smuggled into South Africa to be sold in the streets, very cheap. But the owner is making billions of rands out of that. And it is competing those companies which have long been here. And it's not being manufactured in South Africa, which means it doesn't create jobs in South Africa. They come to take the money out of South Africa. So if the government want to avoid things like that, for example, I don't know, they must come clean to say people who are selling fake cigarettes must be identified and arrested. People must give tip off to the SAPS and things like that. Not to say when you are smoking outside, you'll be arrested. When you're smoking in your car and there's a non-smoke, I don't know what they are trying to do. Even if it's environmental issues or they are trying to control the number of smokers in South Africa, they should come clean and have other imbizos or campaign to say, let us reduce our way of smoking. Let us not encourage children to smoke. Let us not sell cigarettes to young kids. Let's encourage older people to stop smoking. And let's educate the masses or our public about the dangers of smoking. Then that would be something else. Not to try and control it using an act. I mean, imagine trying to smoke for the first time. You are not aware of this proposed bill. Let's say now it's an act or it's law, and you find yourself being arrested. And then when you arrive in prison, someone who is there for murder, rape, possession of legal firearm and ammunition, they ask you, why are you here? What are you here for? I wanted to try smoking, and unfortunately I was in a place where I'm not allowed to smoke according to law, and I'm sentenced for 6 months. And then you meet some of these people because of a reckless thinking by our government, because they did not come clear to try and say what is it that they want to regulate, what is it that they want to control. Because it's very dangerous to introduce or to expose someone to a prison environment for a very minor crime. But it's not the first time. I mean, we've seen people being sentenced to prison for merely pocket picking, for merely stealing chocolates in a shop. Things which can be regulated. A person can be forced to pay that chocolate. A person can work maybe for some hours, and in return they get nothing because they were stealing. A person can be exposed, to be seen outside that shop that he or she tried to steal. Things like that to avoid, because most of the people who are in prison did not commit serious crimes. I'm not saying that there's no serious crime. What I'm trying to say is that there are crimes which are not fit for a person to be sent into an environment that is going to expose them to gangsterism, number one, to different types of health hazards, because prison is dirty, there's a bad smell, there's TB in prison, there are different things that are happening in prison. For a person who can arrive in prison today and in trying to defend themselves, they take someone's life. I mean, it's not a place where it should be easy for our justice system to send people, unless if the person has committed serious crime. So I think this bill should be opposed, and I think there are a lot of focus that the state is shifting itself. They don't want to go there, but they know that they should be going there. For example, in dealing with serious crimes, in South Africa, we've seen hijacking going up. A lot of females, even males, are not free to drive at night. Those who are knocking off at night, it's very difficult for them to drive themselves from work to where they stay. Imagine you have a car as a woman. Your husband must drive you to work, and then they must also come and fetch you. Something which increased the cost of living within a household because of trying to avoid these hijackings which are everywhere in South Africa. So I think they should strategize on some of those laws that regulate this type of crimes and be more visible, and make sure that the SAPS, the metropolis, are more visible during the day and at night in all crime hotspots. In South Africa, you will find a place with a sign saying crime hotspot, don't stop. There is no police visibility whatsoever. And there is not even a satellite police station even around that place, where if something bad happens, you can immediately report or run to. Let's say they take your car, you can run to that place even if you don't have a phone. It's a crime hotspot. It is known. They put a board. And still people are going to be robbed, hijacked, and their belongings taken from them. But the state is aware that people of this area or people in this area will rob you. But they don't intervene. Now they want to pass a law that will send a smoker to prison to be exposed to an environment that has people, some of them have given up in life. So I think this bill shouldn't be supported. I also don't support this bill because I don't understand what it seeks to achieve. If they want to regulate the number of smokers, then it means they can increase the price of cigarettes in South Africa and decrease the number of outlets that sells cigarettes. That will work. I think it's an easy solution. It can work so that a few people will afford, and then even cigarettes themselves will not be easily accessible. So those are my views when it comes to this tobacco bill. I support those who say it must be stopped. It must not be passed into law, because if it is passed into law, it is not only going to be difficult to the smokers, it's going to be risky for smokers. The chances of them being exposed to a prison environment will be very high. So thank you for watching. These are just my views. I'm Admas and Lechagu. This is Authentic Info Podcast.